In the shadowy aftermath of World War II, justice took on a chilling form behind the thick stone walls of Landsberg Prison in Bavaria, Germany. This was no ordinary prison. It was a silent execution ground for some of the most horrific war criminals the world has ever known. While the Nuremberg Trials are widely known, far fewer people know what happened afterward, away from the cameras, where justice was swift, brutal, and absolute. From SS executioners to death camp commandants, dozens of notorious figures were sentenced to die, and Landsberg was where the hangman awaited. Between 1945 and 1951, more than 250 war criminals were secretly executed here, their deaths shrouded in silence, shielded from the public eye, and largely forgotten in history books. This is not a tale for the faint of heart. This is the untold story of Landsberg Prison, its walls echoing with justice, revenge, and grim reckoning. Long before it earned infamy as a site of mass executions, Landsberg Prison already held a dark place in history. Built in 1910, the prison was originally designed as a modern Bavarian correctional facility. But its most notorious early resident would mark it forever: Adolf Hitler. In 1924, Hitler was incarcerated here after his failed beer hall putsch. During his time at Landsberg, he was treated more like a celebrity than a criminal. It was within these walls that he dictated Mein Kampf, laying the ideological foundation for the horrors that would follow.
The prison's somber corridors and towering walls became deeply intertwined with the rise of Nazism. Ironically, the very place where Hitler once penned his vision for Germany would later house and execute the architects of his nightmare. Landsberg's history isn't just steeped in punishment. It became the grim bookend to the Nazi regime, where the seeds of genocide were first sown and later buried with the men who carried them out. After the fall of Nazi Germany in 1945, Allied forces took control of many of its prisons, but Landsberg held unique symbolic and practical value. The U.S. Army quickly converted it into War Criminal Prison No. 1, a designated facility for high-ranking Nazi convicts sentenced by military tribunals, especially those emerging from the infamous Dachau trials. Unlike Nuremberg, which was largely about documenting the crimes of top Nazi leadership, the trials that led convicts to Landsberg focused on concentration camp personnel, Einsatzgruppen commanders, and SS officers who had committed atrocities across occupied Europe. The prison's transformation was swift and chilling. Its sterile administration wings and barred cells became holding pens for execution-bound war criminals. As courtrooms delivered verdicts, Landsberg became the staging ground for justice. Its gallows prepared, its guards selected, and its mission redefined. The machinery of justice began turning at Landsberg in December 1945. Convicted war criminals, many from the Dachau trials, started arriving in waves. Their fates sealed by overwhelming evidence of brutality, mass murder, and crimes against humanity. The first executions were carried out quietly, under tight U.S. military control, and with a sense of grim efficiency. Unlike the spectacle of Nuremberg, these hangings were swift and secret. The condemned were not paraded or publicly shamed. They were walked from their cells to the gallows, one after another. There were no photographers, no last-minute pleas to the crowd, just a quiet march to a final drop. The executions were conducted at dawn, often with several prisoners hanged on the same day. The process followed strict military protocol: identification confirmed, sentence read, hands bound, and the hood drawn. Then the lever dropped. By 1951, Landsberg had witnessed 252 executions, more than any other Allied-run prison in post-war Germany. Many of these men were directly responsible for the deaths of thousands: camp guards who tortured prisoners, SS men who oversaw mass shootings, and medical officers who performed lethal experiments. Landsberg became, for a time, the silent executioner of Nazi terror. The sheer scale of executions at Landsberg was staggering and deliberate. Between 1945 and 1951, the prison processed waves of death sentences with ruthless efficiency. At times, the gallows ran almost daily. In one remarkable stretch during May 1946, 28 SS camp guards were executed over just 4 days. Each execution was conducted in a secluded yard within the prison walls, away from public view. The U.S. military treated the process with military formality, a roll call of the condemned, the reading of sentences, and finally, the execution itself. Prisoners were not given long delays or drawn-out appeals. Once confirmed, the sentence was swiftly carried out. The standard method was hanging, using a calculated drop that broke the neck. In rare cases involving American soldiers or common criminals, the firing squad was employed instead. The hangings were overseen by U.S. military personnel, with selected guards rotated to maintain psychological distance. There was no media coverage, no witnesses beyond officials, and no glorification. These were acts of state justice, precise, emotionless, final. What made Landsberg chilling wasn't just how many were executed, but how methodically, almost mechanically, it was done. It was industrial-scale punishment for industrial-scale crimes. Among the 252 executed at Landsberg were some of the most notorious figures of the Nazi killing machine, men whose names were synonymous with horror, cruelty, and cold-blooded efficiency. Werner Braune, a commander of Einsatzgruppe D, was hanged on June 7, 1951. He had overseen mass shootings in Ukraine and Crimea, personally ordering the deaths of thousands, including women and children. His composure at trial was unnerving. He showed no remorse, only allegiance to the ideology that justified extermination. Otto Ohlendorf, Braune's superior and head of Einsatzgruppe D, was executed the same day. Ohlendorf was a man of statistics. He famously reported to the court that his unit had executed over 90,000 people, almost proudly. He claimed it was done humanely, with a sense of duty, an admission as chilling as the crime itself. Erich Naumann, another Einsatzgruppen leader, also faced the gallows that June. His unit trailed the German army into the Soviet Union, leaving massacres in its wake. Thousands were murdered under his command in forests, ravines, and village squares. Hans Moser, executed in 1948, was one of the last high-ranking SS men from Mittelbau-Dora concentration camp. Known for his brutality, Moser was infamous for personally ordering prisoners to be tortured and shot. Each of these men lived by the creed of Nazi supremacy, and each met his end beneath the hangman's noose at Landsberg. Their executions were more than retribution. They were a final, uncompromising answer to unforgivable crimes. As the executions at Landsberg mounted, so did the controversy, both in Germany and abroad. By the late 1940s, the once united resolve to punish Nazi war criminals began to fracture. The Cold War had set in, and priorities were shifting from punishment to political stability. Many Germans, including some officials in the newly formed West German government, began to push back against the relentless hangings. Protests erupted outside Landsberg and across Bavaria. Demonstrators carried signs, sang hymns, and even shouted anti-Semitic slogans, not in support of justice, but demanding clemency for the condemned. To many Germans, these men were now viewed less as war criminals and more as victims of Allied vengeance. Some saw them as pawns in a larger geopolitical struggle, especially as tensions with the Soviet Union escalated.
West German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer personally intervened, negotiating with U.S. High Commissioner John J. McCloy to reduce sentences. The result was a massive wave of commutations. Of the 102 death sentences handed down in the Einsatzgruppen trials alone, only 14 were actually carried out. This clemency movement outraged Holocaust survivors and many in the international community. To them, the idea of mercy for mass murderers was grotesque, a betrayal of justice. Landsberg's gallows began to fall silent, not because the crimes had become less terrible, but because the politics had become more complicated. Justice was now balanced against diplomacy. By the early 1950s, Landsberg's role as an execution site came to an end. The final hangings took place on June 7, 1951, bringing the total to 252 war criminals executed. Shortly after, the United States began handing over control of the prison to West Germany. By 1958, the last American personnel had withdrawn, and Landsberg returned fully to German administration. Today, Landsberg Prison still operates, but its purpose has dramatically shifted. No longer a symbol of post-war vengeance, it now focuses on rehabilitation and modern corrections. The execution yard is gone. The gallows have been dismantled. But the echoes of what happened there remain. For decades, the German government avoided memorializing the site. Only in recent years has there been broader public acknowledgement of Landsberg's grim past. Quiet plaques and historical discussions are slowly bringing this dark chapter back into collective memory. Landsberg is no longer a place of death, but its legacy still speaks in silence. Landsberg Prison was never meant to be a symbol of reckoning, but history transformed it into one. Within its walls, some of the worst perpetrators of the Holocaust met their end, not with fanfare, but with rope and resolve. Justice there wasn't poetic, it was procedural, efficient, and chillingly silent. In a world still grappling with genocide, war crimes, and state-sponsored atrocities, the story of Landsberg is more than history, it's a warning. We remember the crimes, the trials, and the executions. But the deeper question remains: can a society truly heal if it chooses to forget the place where justice was served?